Hello, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel called Living in Hayward, where we talk about all things real estate related and also about living in Hayward. I'm Audrey Miller. I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. We're located right on Main Street in Hayward, and feel free to reach out to me anytime to buy, sell. If you have questions about the area, my contact information is below. And also, if you like my channel, feel free to subscribe or share, like my channel, or sign up for the notifications so that you receive an update whenever I have a new video. So today we're going to talk about a deep dive, pun intended, into the Tier 1 lakes. I have a video that I did a while ago called What Lake Should I Buy Property On in Hayward, Wisconsin? And in that video, I talked about the different tiers of lakes and the price points associated with those lakes. And I'm going to kind of take a deep dive into the Tier 1 premier lakes today in this video. So I hope that you find this really helpful. So what makes a lake a Tier 1 lake, in my opinion? Obviously, this is open to discussion and opinion, and this is one person's thought on it. But I do have a good backing for my reasons to call these lakes Tier 1 lakes. First of all, location. They are in close proximity to Hayward. 4 of them are. The other 2, one is south, which is Long Lake, one is north, which is Lake Namaquagan. But they're still within driving distance from the Twin Cities and in proximity to amenities, whether in Hayward, Stone Lake, Cable. The ones right around Hayward are probably the top tier of the Tier 1 lakes, but location is one thing. Another is size. So lots of people want to be on a big lake. All of these Tier 1 lakes are at least 3,000 acres or more in size, ranging up to 15,000 some for the Chippewa flowage. People like to be able to explore a larger area if they like to pontoon, fish, speedboats. They want to have more space to explore. The third reason is because these are super clear, clean, deep lakes, with the exception of the Chippewa flowage, which I call a Tier 1A, and I'll get into that when I talk about the Chippewa flowage later. They are also lakes that tend to have bars and restaurants on them. Almost all of them do, other than Grindstone Lake, and they are full recreational lakes. A lot of people want to be able to water ski, jet ski, pull a tube behind their boat. So those are the main reasons that make these Tier 1 lakes, and as a result, the highest number of people want to be on these lakes, thus increasing the square foot home price on these lakes, which includes the land, and also raising the average sale price. So I talk to buyers on a daily basis, so I have a really good feel for what people want, what they desire in a lake. And obviously different people have different criteria, but the highest demand is for these Tier 1 lakes, and that's why I classify them as such. It doesn't mean we don't have tons of other really great lakes in the area. We absolutely do. If your budget is a little bit less, if you kind of want to be on a quieter, smaller lake, there's lots of reasons to pursue other lakes, but this video is focusing specifically on the Tier 1 lakes. So let's dive into it. Okay, so first I'm going to give you a broad overview of the lakes and their locations in a general map setting, and then we'll delve into the particulars of each lake, some more details about each one, and also a little bit of market info about average sale price on those lakes, average square foot price, and just some other details on each lake. So first of all, here is the map of the Tier 1 lakes in the Hayward area. So this one I'm circling right now is Round Lake. And here is the city of Hayward right here. So Round Lake is about 10 minutes to the east of Hayward off of Highway B and off of some other back roads as well, up around the north side and the east and west sides of the lake. And there's also Little Round, which actually connects to Big Round and is separated by Highway B, but there's a bridge there and you can get between the two of them. Then we have south of Hayward and kind of down towards Stone Lake, we've got Lakuta Ray, and that's 5,100 and some acres. And Grindstone is actually right in that same area. So about 20 minutes to the south, a little bit to the east of Hayward. And Grindstone is about 3,100 acres. And those two also have a water connection between them. But that connection can be a little more tenuous in terms of whether you can get through there, depending on water levels, depending on the type of boat you have. That's a pretty low bridge to get under. So sometimes like a pontoon won't fit through. But they are connected by a waterway. Then we have the Chippewa flowage, which is huge, around 15 to 17,000 acres, depending on your source of information. That is this entire area here. And then the other two, one will be to the north that I'm discussing, and that is Lake Namaquagan by Cable. It's kind of up in this general area, but it gets into Bayfield County, and I'm currently on the Sawyer County site. So, but about 20 to 30 minutes north of Hayward. And then the last one is Long Lake, which is off of Highway B also, but a different Highway B down by Stone Lake. So this is Long Lake here. So from Hayward, you're going to be closer to 30 minutes on this end of the lake, 40 minutes, 45 minutes on the other end. But it's really closer to Birchwood. And the lake is a little bigger than this, but again, it gets cut off by the Washburn County line because the southwest portion of Long Lake is in Washburn County. Okay, so now let's talk about each lake individually and also talk about the sale prices on that lake. So we're going to start with Round Lake. Again, that's the one, if you remember, 10 minutes east of Hayward, maybe 15, 20, depending where you are on the lake. Wonderful location, a little over 3,000 acres, super clear and clean. There are two restaurants on that lake. They're both right along Highway B, and that is the Dock and Powell's. They're both about 10 to 12 minutes from Hayward. So they're on kind of the south end of the lake, but it's really nice to have a couple of bars and restaurants. Both have nice outdoor seating, and both are usually pretty busy in the summertime. So other things that make Round Lake unique, there's a lot of really large houses on that lake, and it does garner arguably the highest prices in the area. There's an island on the lake that's kind of open to the public for day camping and that kind of thing, or stopping and having some food or drinks. So that's kind of a neat feature. I have been on Round Lake only once, so I'm not super expert, but I hear the fishing is good. And like I said, the shoreline and the water clarity is just really awesome. There might be a few back bays where you'll find some lily pads, but it's still super clear water and just, a phenomenal lake in the area. And this is some information on sale prices of property on Round Lake. So as you can see, the average of all the homes, and this is in just the last year. So from September of 2023 to September of 2024, the average sale price was 1.135 million on Round Lake. And these are listed in order of sale price. So the last couple would be condo properties. I think those last four are condo properties. And I actually excluded those on the rest of my lake information because they can really skew the numbers on an average sale price on a lake or even an average square foot price. But I did include them here on Round. And if you took those out, the prices would be slightly higher for the average sale price and the average square foot price. Now keep in mind the square foot prices on all of these include the land. It's the total sale price. So the average size of home was just under 2,500 square feet. Average sale price 1.135, and the average square foot was 457. But I think that would be well over 500 if you took out the condos. Just always keep in mind on these larger lakes, if you can find a condo property and you're comfortable with that setup with a shared frontage and shared common spaces, you will be able to get on these tier 1 lakes for a little less out of your pocket if you're okay with a condo. And then let's move on to La Coudray. That is this sheet right here. So on La Coudray, only a total of 5 properties that weren't condos, and there wasn't many condos on LCO either, but 5 properties sold in the last year. So this is part of the issue is some of these tier 1 lakes are actually getting difficult to get on in general. But as far as La Coudray is about 7 miles long. Again, it kind of goes without saying, super clear water, sandy, rocky bottom, no weed issues. They did have some weed issues in Muskie Bay back in the day, and they were able to treat that. And from what I know, it's been good since then. I've actually spent a ton of time on La Coudray, and for me personally, it's probably my second favorite lake in the area after the Chippewa flowage. I love the size of it. I love that you can get to Grindstone sometimes. You can go into Little La Coudray, even down the Billy Boy flowage. There's actually 4 bodies of water connected there that are navigable. So that's a pretty cool aspect of La Coudray. I love cruising around the shoreline and looking at the homes. I love that there's a sandbar at Wismo where you can get out and swim. There's this really long sandbar. If you've ever spent time on La Coudray in the summertime, you probably know the boats all gather there and everything. So kind of a fun time. And then there's 2 bars and restaurants. One, they're on either end of the lake. So Angler's Haven is on one end and Trails End Resort is on the other end. Both really fun places. Trails End does do live music sometimes. They've got a big beach area and it's a larger place with a lot of outdoor seating. Angler's Haven is a little bit smaller and that's part of a resort, but both have really great setting and good places to visit for food and drinks. And that's kind of the info on La Coudray. And I'm sure some people who have lived there for years and years know much more about it than I do. But the average sale price on La Coudray in the last year was $777,000 for a total of $503 per square foot average. And like I said, some of these were actually kind of lower end homes. So the typical price on La Coudray is a little bit impacted by the lack of comps and the lack of comps that are the more typical. I would say that in a normal year, you may expect to be paying average of 900 plus to be on Le Coudray. It just depends. But when there's so little comparable information, it gets a bit skewed over the course of just 1 year. Okay, so now let's talk about Long Lake. Long Lake is the one that's kind of outside of the area of the 4 tier 1 lakes in the Hayward area. And we have Lake Namacoggin up by Cable, but Long Lake is the only one further south. So more in the Birchwood area, kind of Stone Lake area on the north end of Long Lake. Long Lake is actually named because it is over 3,000 acres, but it is 15 miles long. And there's one part of the lake called the Narrows that is more like a river. And that's a pretty good distance that kind of connects the bigger south part of the lake to the bigger north part of the lake. So what I found on Long Lake, and I'm no expert on Long Lake, but I do know that it has really good water clarity. It's a large lake. It has a lot of bars and restaurants. I think there are between 5 and 7 bars and restaurants on the lake, a couple of marinas. There's some islands with houses on them, which is pretty cool. But the only time I've seen what I would call less than desirable frontage on Long Lake is sometimes in the Narrows. It can get to be kind of weedy or a little bit discolored in the summertime. There's just not as much water flow through there. And then I've seen in some back bays on Long Lake where the water quality and clarity is a little bit less than desirable and kind of mucky. So that would be in back bays or places where water isn't moving as much. But for the most part, Long Lake is just a really beautiful lake. It's a very interesting lake because of the length and the size of the lake. And in terms of property prices on that particular lake, again, this is from the last year, not including condo properties. The average was 617,000 sale price and 1,850 square feet at an average of 407 per square foot on that lake. And you can see the wide variety when you study this a little bit more. I'll just leave it up here for a second so you can look at kind of the different size of homes, the price per square foot, the sale prices. There's a lot of variation. Long Lake does have a really broad variety. There's some really huge, beautiful homes. There's a lot of smaller cabins. There's some old resorts that were conduit off. So Long Lake is a good option if you don't mind being a little bit further from Hayward, but you're looking for a full recreational, tier 1 lake. The next lake that we have here is the Chippewa Flowage. And the Chippewa Flowage is the one I am most familiar with. I actually live right by the Chippewa Flowage. I absolutely love the Flowage. I'm a huge fan, but it does have its pros and cons. And I always refer to this one as tier 1A because some people don't like Flowage. And then the people who love the Flowage really love the Flowage and don't want to be anywhere else. The Flowage has very much expanded in popularity even in the last 5 years. It was created in the 1920s or no, 30s, I believe it was. I have a whole video on my channel about the history of the Chippewa Flowage and footage just from the Chippewa Flowage. But I have been on this lake many, many, many times, so I'm super familiar, more of an expert on this lake than I am on the others, I guess you could say. So you have about 15,300 acres. So it is massive compared to any other lake in the area. And Le Coudray would be next, but the Flowage is triple the size of Le Coudray. However, most of the shoreline is owned by either the Xcel Energy Power Company, the Le Coudray Tribe, or the state of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. So it has miles and miles of shoreline, but a lot of it is undeveloped. So it has very much of like a wilderness feel. You feel like you're very much in nature. The houses that are on the Flowage tend to be grouped together in small areas where private landowners own land versus it being, owned by one of those other entities that I mentioned. So there are 15 bars and restaurants on the lake. They're spread out all over. There are camping sites on the lake, which is another really cool thing that is unique to the Chippewa Flowage. No other lakes that I know of in the area have overnight camping. So it's a primitive camping. You've got a picnic table and a toilet, like a pit toilet, and you set up your tent and you can boat to your island. If it's available, you can just go on there and reserve or keep it. Once your tent is there, it's yours to use for a minimum or a maximum, of 10 days. So those are some really unique things about the Flowage. I think what I would say the con of the Flowage, and I am not bothered by this, but some people are, the water clarity is not as good. It doesn't have the depth and it's not spring fed. It's controlled by a dam. So they drain it down in the wintertime and it doesn't have the same spring fed water clarity. It can actually get a little bit green in August when there's kind of an algae bloom and then it'll clear back up again. The water's clear, but it has those tannins in the water. So it's kind of a brown clear. Lots of sandbars, lots of islands, lots of places to swim, but it's not quite the same water clarity. I would say the other thing that makes the Flowage a little bit less desirable is proximity to the Twin Cities. Since a lot of our second homeowners are from the Twin Cities, you're going to drive an extra 20 to 30 minutes east of Hayward, not beyond Round Lake, but from in general from the cities, you'll be pushing that 3 hour to 3:15 mark to get to the flowage from the Twin Cities area, obviously depending on which suburb you're in. So that's one other little downside in terms of the commute back and forth if you're coming up on weekends, etc. So on the flowage, you can see here the average sale price was 594,000, 334 per square foot, and just under 2,000 square feet for size of home. So prices have gone up a lot on the Chippewa flowage over the last few years, but it's still less expensive than lakes like Round or Lac-Courte, or even Grindstone. Right, and then we have Grindstone Lake. What's kind of funny is Grindstone is more round than Round Lake, even though the two are similar in size. Grindstone is just over 3,000 acres. And as I mentioned previously in the video, it does connect to Lac-Courte and Little Lac-Courte via a channel that goes under the bridge on Highway K. However, it's not always navigable. There's a pretty long stretch that you have to kind of navigate through, almost like a marshy area on the Grindstone side. Sometimes that can be really shallow. If the water is deeper, then you have an issue with getting under the bridge. But it is a lot of times navigable with a small fishing boat, sometimes with a pontoon, depending on the year. So you can't count on being able to go back and forth, but it is a possibility to be able to go back and forth. Grindstone is known for its good fishing, extremely clear water. I don't know of any spot on Grindstone that doesn't have sandy, rocky bottom and crystal clear water. The views are really expansive because it's a big round lake, so almost anywhere you are on the lake, you have a really great view. There's some high elevation on the lake, just like there is on Lac-Courte, but you get really great views from that high elevation as well, if you're willing to, deal with some stairs. There are no bars and restaurants on Grindstone any longer. There used to be two of them. One was called Norwood Haven, and that has since been bought by the tribe, and it's no longer operating as a bar restaurant. And then there was the Waterfront, which was an iconic supper club, bar, restaurant, family owned and run for many, many years, and that ended up getting turned into a private residence. So there's no longer a bar and restaurant. There's hopefully someday somebody will open another one. But Grindstone does tend to garner similar prices to Lac-Courte. However, the comps for this past year don't show that, but this is not very representative because if you look, there was a few properties that sold at a pretty low price that are bringing down the average, and they were real fixer-upper type properties or old resort that was almost not in a condo, but kind of that type of setting, the ones on Raleigh's Lane. So this is not a real true picture of the price on Grindstone. I think it's similar to Lac-Courte in that you might expect the average sale price to be somewhere around that 850 to 900,000 mark. Just the combination of properties that happened to sell in the last year is skewing this a little bit, but I wanted to stay consistent with the information I was providing in terms of the past year's sales. And then we have Lake Namakagon, which is up by Cable. I do cover the Cable area. I don't work up there as much, but it is an area that is within the range that I cover. And Lake Namakagon is actually similar in price point to the others that I mentioned, and I would consider this to be a tier 1 lake based on size, which is again over 3,000 acres, based on water clarity. There is a couple of bars and restaurants also on this lake, which is always a plus. And just lots of good fishing, and it's a very pretty lake. It has a lot of variety within it. And average prices here show as though they are higher than Grindstone and Lac-Courte. I would say that is not necessarily accurate, but I think it is similar, probably between Long and Grindstone and Lac-Courte for pricing. But in the past year, the average was $945,000 for a property there, and average price per square foot on that lake, $367,000. So that kind of wraps up all of the tier 1 lakes in the area. I do want to mention one other thing. Sometimes I'll have people say to me, oh, those prices are so high, I'm just going to buy vacant land and I'm going to build on it. So two things. First of all, unless you're building yourself, the price of building is going to be much higher than buying a home that is already built. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that finding vacant land on these tier 1 lakes is getting virtually impossible. So within the past year, this is all of the property that sold on the 5 tier 1 lakes around the Hayward area, including Long Lake, excluding Namakagon. I had a Namakagon in this list, but there wasn't much that sold up there either. So when you look down through here, you have Round Lake is the first one, second one is on Long, the third one is on Grindstone, fourth one is on Round, fifth one is on Round, one on the Chippewa flowage, and one more on Long Lake. So this is just insane how difficult it has become to actually find a vacant lot on one of these lakes. And look at the average price, $511,000 for a lot on these tier 1 lakes. So it's pretty interesting what's been happening in our area. I personally think that lake prices are just going to continue to climb. There's only so much of it in these premier lakes that are so clean and beautiful. There's just so many people that want to be on those. And I talk to a lot of buyers that only want to be on those lakes. So that continues to keep the prices high. So I hope that you found this really helpful and interesting. Sorry for the looking back and forth on my screen, but I wanted to be able to share my screen with you on this. And as always, if you're interested in buying or selling, want more local area information about Hayward, feel free to reach out to me directly. Call, text, email me, and also subscribe, sign up to get the notifications from YouTube when I post a new video, like, share my videos. Hope you found this helpful, and maybe sometime here I'll do a deep dive into tier 2 or tier 3 and 4 lakes as we go along.